Welcome to Grumbyte's first part on incident management. It's a two-part series, and we are going to look at the first part. So let's get started. This is based upon ITIL framework, and we are talking very specifically about IT service management. This is the agenda for this topic today. We talk about the introduction. We'll have to understand what are the definitions of what basically makes incident management, and there are certain key terms that we need to understand incident management much better. We are going to look at the roles and responsibilities as to who are the persons who are going to drive incident management process, and we're going to look at what are the inputs and outputs. In part 2, we are going to look at the incident management flow and process. We are going to look at what is a major incident management flow, which is having a slight variation, and then we look at what are the key takeaways. So let's get started. As you can see, the most important thing in incident management is that we need to restore the service to a normal way it was. So the thing is that if something goes wrong, we have to be able to get it back to a stage when it's working correctly. So this is basically defined by what is the meaning of correctly. So it is something that is defined as a contract between you and your customer. So it basically means that whatever service that you are promising your customer has to be restored when an incident happens. An incident, we'll look into what is an incident, etc. But the idea is that the customer should not have any kind of a breakdown in service. All incidents, whatever kind of incident that happens, will basically affect the customer. So it is a negative effect, right? So anything that is having a negative effect on the customer comes under the scope of incident management. So the process would be applied to all kinds of incidents. So if it is performance related, or there is some kind of an outage, or whatever it is, everything is covered under incident management. Now let's move on to the next one, which is basically trying to understand the definitions and understanding the key terms which are very central to understanding incident management. So obviously the first one is incident. So what exactly is an incident? So any kind of an unplanned activity which basically interrupts a service, or there is a reduction in the quality of the IT service, is basically considered to be an incident. So here we see something called as a configuration item. We'll talk about what is a configuration item later, but just for you to understand, a configuration item can be anything like a server, for example, or a printer. These are all configuration items. So, a printer failed because you wanted to try to print something there that has failed. That's a configuration item. And we'll go into very specifics of what is that. The next thing we need to understand is the major incident. So this is basically a very highest category of impact of an incident. So what it means is that there is going to be a major disruption in the customer's business activities. So a major incident, what is it? Should be agreed between you and the customer. So for example, a customer would say that, if I lose my profit and loss document, it is a major incident. Well, that is what the customer thinks is very important, then fine, then that is a major incident. But to us, something like, okay, an IT service, a server has gone down, that would be categorized as a major incident. So anyway, you can decide between you and the customer what constitutes a major incident, and that must be agreed upon. So now let's come to what is a configuration item. So a configuration item is any component that needs to be managed to provide a proper customer service. And we are talking very specifically about an IT service. So, for example, you say there is a printer. Here, we are not going to consider the printer as a asset alone. Okay, yeah, it is an asset, no doubt about it, but it is something that is very central to running a business, for example. So, you have to control that printer. You have to know its status. You need to understand the relationship in terms of service delivery. So, what is happening is that there is a meeting, and the board meeting is there, and everybody needs to get a copy of what is the agenda, and you need to print it out. So at the crucial point, let's assume that you're going to send your document to the printer, agenda to the printer, and the printer is not working. Then it's a failure of the IT service, right? So something like that is called as a configuration item. So you don't need to just think of it as an asset alone. Okay. So a good example would be a production web server or an ERP system. Okay. Let's talk about what's a workaround. So what a workaround is nothing but trying to resolve an incident, making it continue as if a normal service has been restored. But the fact is that you have really not solved the underlying problem. So let's assume that today, for whatever reason, you tried to post something in your ERP system and that posting has failed. So what do? You have to go to the software team. You have to ask them, hey guys, this is not posting. So that's an incident, right? And they have to go and fix it. But business cannot stop because of that. So you cannot wait until that guy finishes the software update, etc. and everything, because there are so many other people who are using that ERP system. So what we do is, at that point of time, we say, okay, fine, this thing didn't work. So we'll get it back to normal by restoring an old backup or the old software where this problem was not there, and let it continue. And we know that there is going to be a problem if we try to do something like this, and let's fix it. So this is a workaround. So you have really not solved the problem, but you have let the business continue operations. Next, we talk about a service request. So this is a very simple thing. It's a request from the user for information, for advice, or asking to change something, etc., whatever it is, right? So example of something like this would be like, can you please reset my password? It's called as a service request. Or I don't have access to Visio, so please give me access to Visio. So these are all different types of requests that a user can make. So these are called as service requests. It's not just a user, a business also can raise a service request. The important definition here is SKMS. This is the Service Knowledge Management System. Okay, so this is a very important concept in the whole context of incident management. So this is a set of tools, databases, you may want to call it, which contains knowledge and information. So many times what happens is when you get an incident, it might have occurred earlier. And when it had occurred earlier, there would have been a solution for it. And that solution is what is there in this SKMS. So instead of trying to solve the problem, you can just go back and say, hey, there is a solution for this. Let's use that solution. Okay. And what happens because of that is you're able to resolve incidents much faster. So in the earlier case, what happened was that incident happened. It had to go through 4 or 5 departments, and it took a lot of time before you actually figured out how to solve the problem. But because you solved that problem earlier, that was documented, and that documentation is available in this SKMS. So because that information is already available, when the service desk representative gets an incident, a ticket to solve, he will know exactly how to solve this problem. And what will happen is they will be able to provide the solution instantly. So this is a very important part of incident management, having this knowledge base. So we call it as service knowledge management system. Another important aspect that you need to note here is something called as the KDB, which is the known error database. So for example, what happens is that if a very specific kind of an incident has happened and there is no specific solution to it, so this is known as a known error database. This happens very infrequently. An example for that would be, let's assume that the ERP system is using SAP, and SAP wants to introduce a very specific kind of a feature in their software. Currently, what happens is it doesn't have that feature, but it's under development. So what has happened is the customer, for whatever reason, has tried to implement that solution and it has failed. So when will it work? Only after SAP gives a solution. So you know that when a situation like that occurs, when a customer is asking you to, hey, fix this one, you can tell them very specifically that this is a known error. It is happening because SAP has not yet provided a solution for that. So this is just an example of what you know as a KDB or a known error database. It can be for different other types of reasons also. So let's move on. Now let's talk about the roles and responsibilities that are very important for managing a incident management system within an organization. So what happens is typically there would be a team of people who just look into incidents. Similarly, there are other people who look into SLAs, people who are solving problems, etc. But there is a separate team normally for incident management. So let's look at those roles and responsibilities. The first one is incident manager, and this is the heart of this person is the heart of the whole system. He's the one who is going to manage all the incidents. So what does he do? What are his responsibilities? He's driving the efficiency and the effectiveness of your incident management process. So you have to define the process of incident management, and this person is the one who actually drives it. This person also provides management information. So, okay, how many incidents did I resolve this particular month or this particular day or this quarter? How successful were we? Were we able to take care of the customer in a way that they are satisfied? You have to also manage the incident support staff. So there are people who are actually handling the calls, who are handling emails, etc. from customers, and they are responding to them. So he's in charge for all of them. And what he has to also do is consistently upgrade the system, the process. Okay, if they find that there is a process which is better than what is existing, immediately they are the persons who are going to make the recommendations for the improvement. And this person is also a very key person in managing the major incidents. And he's the gatekeeper, let's say, of all the documentation and also the entire process and the procedures. The most important person. The service desk is actually the frontline people who are actually dealing with the customer on a regular basis. So they are the ones who pick up the call, they are the one who reads emails, etc. And they are the ones who will actually register these incidents. So they have to make sure that every single incident that they get is documented. They have to make sure that the incident is categorized and assign some kind of priority by looking at the incident. So there'll be incidents which are, very high priority. That means, without a solution very fast, there's going to be a collapse in the business side. So this is the person who immediately gives a priority to the incident. And this is also the person who initially diagnoses, what exactly is the problem, what is the incident, what is it about. And if they are able to, they will actually restore or they will try to resolve the problem. This person, basically by looking at the type of incident, if it is beyond their scope of actually resolving it, will know which support group to go to. So for example, if it is a software problem, they will know that, okay, I have to reach out to the software group and tell them to take care of it. If they know that, a database is down, they'll have to know that, okay, I have to reach this database person and tell them that there is a problem and, try to restore the database. Okay. And this is also the person who has to track the incident during the entire life cycle from start to end. That is, until they take up the incident, which basically means that they are going to raise something called as a ticket, until the closure of the ticket. That means the incident is completed. Okay. And this person also is a person who has to look at what is called as a SLA, which is nothing but a service level agreement. That means they have to respond back to the customer saying that, hey, you know what? Thank you. We have received the incident and we have noted it and we have sent it to the appropriate department or person or whatever it is. And I will be the person who is going to interact with you until this whole thing is closed. Okay. So it's a very, very important function. These are the frontline warriors. That is the service desk. They also have other duties. They have to keep the user, that is the customer, informed of the progress. And they also have to escalate it to the appropriate management as to what has happened in case something has been violated. So let's say the customer has called and said that, you know what, somebody has actually stolen my data. Then it becomes a very critical incident, right? So immediately they have to notify the security team because there is intellectual property involved or whatever it is. And they basically make sure that they are holding the customer's hand and the appropriate persons get involved. And ultimately, these are also the person who collects the information from the customer in terms of, how well they have how well they have performed during this entire period. As the customer happy. So they will collect the customer's response. Okay. So this is all the things that the service desk representative does. The next one is the application management team. So what happens is many times the front end service desk representative is not able to solve all the problems, which is very normal because there is only a limited set of things that person can handle. So let's say that there is a complex thing like setting up a change in the access to database. The service desk representative will normally not have those kind of permissions. Okay, so he has to go to a particular team, some application team, some application management team, and tell them, hey, this is what is the problem. Can you look into it? And this application management team will basically look at what is the incident. They will look at the diagnosis of the incident and they will try to give a solution. So if all those things are not possible, they will also say that, hey, you know what? The current setup that you have doesn't allow for this, so you need to make certain changes. And unless you make these changes, this particular incident cannot be resolved. Okay. And what they will do is they are also the persons who will interact with partners. So, for example, you have a system like an ERP system wherein SAP or Oracle or somebody is involved, and they are the ones who have to give certain answers. So this application management team will be the one who liaisons with them, gets the answer, passes it back to the service desk representative, and they will provide back that information to the customer. So now, those are all the key roles and responsibilities. And now that you know about it, now we look at the next aspect, which is the inputs and outputs which are required for a incident management system. So let us look at what are the inputs first. So the inputs are the diagnosis and the resolution. We need to identify what are the required changes to resolve an incident. And we need to identify the requirement of the partner involvement and initiate the process. These are all the different types of input that are required for resolving an incident. If the person in the front, which is the service desk representative, is not able to resolve it on his own. So the application management team will be involved in this one. Typically, the software development team, if it is required, security, if it is required, database administrator, if they are required. These are all the different types of people, and they are the ones who are going to diagnose it. So these are all the inputs, that is required to resolve an incident. And what are the outputs? The outputs become service requests. Oh, okay, hey, this particular incident requires fixing this code. So that becomes a service request to the software development team. Then the output is communication. So if there is a problem, then the management will be informed saying that, hey, you know what, this particular incident cannot be resolved. What do you want us to do? So the management or the whoever it is has to pick up a call and talk to the customer and say that this is where we are stuck. It is not our problem, or it is our problem, but it requires time. Also, notifications are part of outputs of an incident management, and solutions and workarounds. These are all the different types of outputs. So I think at this point of time, you understand what all incident management is all about. and you get a sense of where we are heading. So we are actually going to look at the process, but that is going to be a separate session. And you can look at it in my next video session. And thank you for the current session. Watch the next video, which will be available shortly. Thank you. Have a good day.